Hi, this is Stu, and of course today we're here for Asana School, and this time with Joey Miles, and we're going to be looking at Parivrtta Parshvakonasana, which is quite a tricky posture if you're going to do it right. Joey, is there something you can tell us about the posture first, and then we're going to see it, aren't we?
So this is one of perhaps the hardest standing poses in the Ashtanga primary series. Some people even question whether or not it should really be in the primary series because it's that difficult.
Right.
What I'm going to be looking for today and playing around with variations to explore is I'm looking for a feeling energetically of connection between the back leg and the top hand.
Right.
Or we could describe it as connection between the lower body and the upper body. It's very easy to sever that connection. So although we're looking at a sense of alignment of a straight line from the back heel to the top hand, and that depends on the angle, which we'll explore more later, this is really what I'm after, this connectivity from the lower body to the upper body and vice versa. Okay, so let's take a look.
Cool. So this is Joey in the finished posture of Parivrtta Parshvakonasana, but there's a long journey to get to this position and lots of stuff that can be happening. So Joey is now going to sort of come out and talk us through the various options and give you an idea of what you might be working on.
Okay, so when we start this pose, there's a whole runway of possibility. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of those possibilities for approaching the pose when we're a little stiffer, and then we'll work up from there. Okay, so the first thing that I would like to say about this pose in terms of the sequencing is it's the second twist. Okay. Now the first twist, which is called Parivrtta Trikonasana, is a very difficult pose, but for very different reasons. So my experience is that for many people, for years and years, in Parivrtta Trikonasana, all they really get to feel is the front hamstring and buttock. So just to reiterate for those of you who aren't so familiar with the pose, Parivrtta Trikonasana looks something along this line. Okay. Now in the Parivrtta Trikonasana, we can focus on the extension of the spine, the turning of the back ribs, all this different stuff, but predominantly everybody is preoccupied with the sensation here and here for possibly their entire kind of journey of yoga. Okay, so to feel the complexity of what's going on higher up in the body and the spine it's really not such an accessible pose. Now this particular pose, whilst it's very difficult, and some could argue it's harder, the joy of this pose is we take out the equation of the hamstring. So the front hamstring doesn't have to stretch. Okay, so the fact that the front leg is bending is the first kind of, is my gift to you, so to speak. You know, at least we haven't got to contend with that. Okay, so if I just show you a variation I often ask people to do, it'll look something like this. We come into a lunging posture. Okay, now from here, okay, the tendency will be to fall forward. Okay, so yeah, I now take my weight off the front leg and I shift the weight back. So you can see, instead of being here, I go back. So I basically have my the weight of the pelvis more towards this back knee. Okay. Now we'll take a little time here. Okay, reaching up, and we're trying to get space here, right down low at the pit of the belly. So if I just flip sides for you, what I can show you when I'm trying to work here, okay, is this lengthening here, where the top thigh becomes the pit of the belly. Okay, so this area here has to lengthen, and again, you won't get the length if you're falling forward. Okay, so we deliberately bring the weight more to the back knee. Okay, when we now work here, we can actually work on creating space, because this is where the turn is going to begin. Now in this first variation, we're not going to turn too much, so now we line up this hand here, the fingers with the big toe, and we have not crossed the elbow over. Okay, from here, okay, we now, this is the tricky bit, we just keep gazing down here between the fingers and the big toe. We now work, the hand is on the lower back or the sacrum, on straightening the leg. Now if you see that movement, when I do this movement, the thing I really want to show you, which would do the other side, is I don't want this buttock to move. So we've placed the hand here, and this will be important for later. I now need to develop the skill set of working the back leg without moving this area. So you can see the right angle I've created. I've lined up the knee with the heel and the ankle. I now work the back leg, hopefully without moving this buttock. From here, okay, we just start to turn, and we line up the top hand with the base hand. And now we work on directions, which will be crown of the head moving forward. Simultaneously, we take the right heel back. Okay, I drop this left buttock down. Simultaneously, I lift the back of the right thigh up. Okay, normally we'll only get one movement or the other, so I'll get the dropping down of the buttock okay, but without the lifting of the back. Or I'll lift the back, but at the same time I'll start to lose this. There's one other direction that's vitally important, which is here, the shin moving forward. Okay? So this is often the first variation I play with. It doesn't look terribly similar to the full pose, but it's accessible, and it teaches you the actions and the directions of extension, particularly in the legs and the upper body. So that would be the first way I'll show you. Okay?
And so when you say shin moving forward, it's not actually moving forward, it's energetically moving forward.
It is, yeah. It's energetically moving forward, and the reason that's so important, if we take it straight to the next step, when we start to cross the arm over the knee, so I'll just show you, when beginners are crossing the arm over the knee, even if it's possible for people here to turn, what I tend to find is the reason there's a slippage here between this arm and the shin and the knee, as we work into the back leg, what tends to happen if the shin here doesn't come forward, you can see if it slips back, that's when it slips. So there's two things that are happening when it slips. The shin moves back, the buttock goes up.
Yeah.
So we've learnt it here, watch. You've learnt this movement, or I could say lack of movement here. So I'm working the back leg now. Now, if you watch, there's no difference here having learnt it in that first action or practiced it in that first action. Again, watch, I don't move here, I don't move here. This energetically moves forward, this energetically drops down. This continues to drop down, I now lift the back heel up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Then we can actually do this accessible movement. Even the common variation, which is done like this, it's the same aspect that we have to work on.
Yeah.
Okay? Does that make sense?
Are we looking for 90, so that thigh parallel to the floor?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and again, the most common error that occurs is the stance is too short. So nobody's doing it deliberately wrong, but what's happening is if the stance is too short here, this starts to occur. And that's just because my feet are too close together. So in terms of the length, right from the beginning, we line up the feet with the hands. It has to be a long, long stance. Okay? So again, you can see from here, I'm keeping this energetically moving forward, but I have to move that left heel back. Okay, this right buttock dropping down.
Yeah.
This left thigh up. So I play a lot with this directionality, forward and back, up and down. Does that make
what
some
about
sense?
distance width-wise between the feet if you tramline them?
Okay, so classically we always line up, as you know, the front foot, the heel to the back instep. Because this is such a challenging pose, it's essential to go wider. And that's essentially what we're going to look at now as we deepen the pose. I was talking before at the very beginning about this energetic feeling of connectivity from the back leg or from the lower body all the way to the upper body. Now, I can, from this angle, make it appear like I have that connection, but my own experience is I lose that connection. Okay? If I bring the back heel fully down, what we'll see if we shift the angle now, I'll show you from the back, is the hip will tend to sway out. Okay, yeah. So let's take a look at that now. Okay, I'll just shift the angle of the mat. Is that okay from there? So you can see, watch here, there's a relatively straight line, okay, from the space that's dropping between the thighs towards the crown of the head. As I now shift and pivot on this back foot, and this back foot comes in, you'll see the left hip tends to swing out. Yeah. And it's very difficult for me to compensate that movement. Now I can go wider, okay, and that makes some adjustment, okay. However, it tends to be easier to keep this back heel lifted. The way I would often explain it to people is it's a little bit like how I mean, not that I've done it, but it's a little bit like how a boxer's power would come from the turning of the hip.
Yes.
In this way, there's power, whereas if it's just here, there's no power.
Yes.
So what I'm often looking for in the postural yoga practice is a feeling of power coming from the ground, from the heel up to the back foot. Yeah. And I can feel whether or not I'm getting that connection in Vira 1, which is the same now in Parivrtta Parshvakonasana, or whether or not I've severed the connection.
Yeah.
So by the time the misalignment occurs, sometimes this feeling of the severing of the connection occurs.
Yeah,
Okay?
it's like a loose grounding, isn't it? It's like you're not really rooted.
Yeah. So let's take a look at using the wall for the back heel. Okay?
Perfect.
You mind stepping in? I'm turning into a puddle over here. Okay, so Neil's now going to demonstrate the pose, and I'm going to show you a few more points. We've deliberately moved here, close to the back wall, so in a moment, Neil's going to be driving the heel back into the wall. Okay, that's going to make two things happen. One is it adds stability, and the other thing when you're practicing this at home, which is why we're doing this video, is for you to feel this quality of constant feedback from the wall. It becomes very obvious whether or not you're actually pressing energetically into the wall or not, as the case may be. Okay, so he's going to start the pose. Stretch your right arm up. Okay. Now, if you remember what I said before, I'll reiterate it now with the body in front. Shift the weight back a bit. Bring your pelvis back. Yeah, there. That's it. Now, from here, as you reach up through the right arm, try to get length and space from this area here, right from the pit of the belly, really from the bladder and the bowel. This area very low down. It's lower than you think. This area has to lift. Okay. Use the arm to lift this area. Stretch up, stretch up, stretch up. Now you can bring this hand across. Okay. And as you exhale, when you're ready, take the armpit over. So you have to turn from very low down in the guts. Perfect. Hand down. Slowly, slowly. Good. Keep this moving forward. Now let's place, all of you, the hand on the buttock in order to keep this buttock dropping down. So you can press down here. Okay, now this is the tricky bit. We want to keep all of this exactly the same place. If this goes up a tiny bit, it's okay, but it can't go up much as we now adjust the back leg. So when you're ready, use the exhalation to drive the heel back. That's very good. Keep dropping down here, dropping down here. Now, from here, you need to make sure you didn't, with your eyes, look back here. It's vital to keep looking in this area at this point. Otherwise, the spine's going to shorten. The waist here will lose space. So all the time, we adjust the back leg. Okay, we're looking here. Okay. Now, from here, keep looking in the same spot. You should feel yourself the feedback coming from the heel, which presses there. Okay, back thigh lifting up, back thigh lifting up, back thigh lifting up as the buttock drops down. Left buttock down, right thigh up. Okay, now, without changing anything, just stretch the left arm straight up. Good, and over. Good. The head will be the last thing to turn. Hold it and breathe. Now, ideally, you don't want to breathe so much into the front left ribs. You want to direct your attention of the breath into the back right ribs. Back right ribs, back right ribs. Now, exhale, look down. Place the knee back down. Good, and release. Okay? So when we're working in this variation, you can relax now, that's great. When we're working in this variation, there's essentially two principal stages. Okay? If we work, let me just show you briefly. Okay? I'm just going to steal your mat for a sec. The stage that Neil just worked on there, the heel was in this position. Okay? The next stage you want to work on, okay, is like that with the back foot. Okay, so if I keep my foot there a little wider, what you'll see I'll do is I'll start in the same manner here, okay, driving the heel straight back. Okay, once you're feeling some steadiness there, remember, without swinging that right hip out to the right side, I'm keeping it cutting in. So not only is the sit bone dropping down, it's moving towards the midline that way, towards my left. I now pivot on the back foot and I just stop at this halfway point here. Okay? Does that make sense? So those are the two principal positions of the foot. One is up, one is down. That's like a halfway point. Obviously in the full pose, we're aiming to get the heel to the floor. Okay? So what I'd urge you all to do is to work these two stages, back heel up, back heel halfway down, using the wall. Okay? Now, the disadvantage of these methods, particularly if you're in the middle of your practice and you're not using the wall, is there'll be a little bit more instability potentially. But of course, the simultaneous advantage that then comes from that is that actually if you get the action in the leg, even if the heel's not touching the wall, you're reaching for it. So you have to keep the action, the direction of extension stays there. There's a problematic quality that happens in a posture, which is once you've got to a place, you stop the energetic movement. It's almost like in dog pose when the heels are pressing into the floor. Because the heels are often on the floor, people no longer continue to press. Whereas if the heels are actually that little bit raised, there's actually something to reach for. You'll see it in so many things, like if I'm reaching for the light bulb, here there's life through the arm. As soon as I've got the object, there tends to be this happen. So actually, there's this big advantage of the method of not letting yourself bring the heel all the way down. Okay, so try.
Can I just ask you another thing? Just the relationship of the knee
Yeah.
to the torso or to the pelvis of the front knee.
Yeah.
Do you feel that that front knee should basically be in line with the center of the body, the center of the pelvis, or is it still going to be more in line with the outside of the hip? So what you're rotating around, has it moved to the center, or are you going sideways to rotate around?
No, it presses back. So what Stuart's asking is, does this knee, if you couldn't understand from the language, I think what you're asking is, does it come in?
Along with the foot.
Yeah. So what I would always do is, I allow this to move this way, okay, in order to now cut in. So I've moved the knee, I've lined it up here with the heel, but I move it across. Okay, I've even let the foot, this area, become destabilized, you could say, in order to now cut across. Now I immediately start pulling the knee back. Now I'm trying to keep the knee lined up with the heel. Okay, that way I'm moving it to the left as I go here. Now what tends to happen, if I work into the full pose, there will be some compensatory movement. So the knee's just moved inward. But ideally, I would always try to move my spine this way, in the directionality of the thigh. But the spine's lining up here at this space between. I'm not lining up the spine with the center of the thigh bone. It's to this inner thigh. Inner thigh, exactly.
Yeah, because a lot of people experience a pinching on the inside of that
inside
hip.
of the hip.
And that's because maybe it's coming across the center line.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I would say, I mean, for less experienced students, that's why I actually believe this method, you know, particularly for people who are experiencing more stiffness, tightness in the groins and so on, is such an effective method. Yeah. You know, it's like I say, it's not as it doesn't look like you're doing the full pose, but actually it's giving you everything you need to get there, and particularly for those for those people who are a little stiffer, it's definitely an accessible entry in. Yeah. And
for those people, I see so much time on the mat that the front arm is crossing the shin in front of the knee.
Exactly.
And just down there.
Yeah, exactly. So because some people are obsessed with it has to be the back foot, you'll actually see this get to pass in certain places. So I'm always basically saying, bring back knee down, bring the arm across. So we might be here, and then work. Yeah. Okay. And there you actually, I was going to say next about that prayer twist as a variation for this particular. Yeah, the prayer twist is it's a commonly taught one. I think it's really useful. Yeah, because it's so commonly taught, I didn't particularly go into it. I think you'll probably already know it if you're watching this. However, I could be wrong.